We are live on the website.
Thank you so much, and good evening to everyone who's attending this very important training this evening. I am Queensborough President Donovan Richards. Welcome to the first in a series of virtual ranked choice voting trainings to ensure that Queens residents are fully informed when filling out their ballots in the upcoming elections. This training is being live streamed on the webpage of the Office of the Queensborough President at www.queensbp.org. Once again, www.queensbp.org. Today, we are joined by Dr. Sarah Saeed, Chair and Executive Director of New York City Civic Engagement Commission, and Amanda Melillo, the Deputy Director of Public Affairs at the New York City Campaign Finance Board. I want to welcome them and thank them for all the work they're doing to get us prepared for ranked choice voting. I'm excited about what we will achieve for Queens and all New Yorkers through ranked choice voting, which was passed with 73.5% voter support. And I'm happy to say that I was one of the first elected officials to come on board in support of ranked choice voting. So happy that it's happening. New York City will be using ranked choice voting in primary and special elections for local offices. Voters can rank up to 5 candidates in order of preference instead of just choosing one, and can still vote for just one candidate if preferred. The first ranked choice voting election will be on February 2nd, 2021, in a special election for New York City Council District 24 in Queens. You can find upcoming election dates and deadlines at voting.nyc. Once again, voting.nyc. New York will use ranked choice voting in primary and special elections for local offices such as mayor, public advocate, comptroller, borough president, and the city council. Ranked choice voting promotes majority support, discourages negative campaigning, promotes reflective representation, and increases participation from military and voters overseas. To see how you should fill out your ballot, you can visit nyccfb.info/nyc/votes/ranked choice voting. And I know they'll give that website out, so I won't do that again. But I want to once again thank you all tonight. This is once again the first in a series of trainings we're going to be hosting here, not just on this specific matter, but many matters that are important to the borough, land use and other things. So I want to welcome you all. And now I guess I'm turning it over to Dr. Saeed.
Thank you so much, Borough President, for those wonderful remarks and for hosting this training today. It's so important. I want to say good afternoon or good evening rather to everyone, and welcome to this ranked choice voting training. As the Borough President said, it will be the first of many. And my name is Dr. Sarah Saeed, and I'm the Chair and Executive Director of the New York City Civic Engagement Commission, and I'll be helping to moderate today's event. And it is really an honor to be partnering on this training with you, Borough President, your office, and the New York City Campaign Finance Board, and of course our great partner, Democracy NYC. And the CEC is a new city agency that was formed to promote civic participation and improve civic trust in New York City. And at CEC, we believe that all New Yorkers should have access, knowledge, and confidence to engage fully with their government in their communities and in elections. And in partnership with the Borough President's Office, the CEC is charged specifically with supporting community boards. So it's really exciting to be here today with all of you to provide a training on ranked choice voting, specifically connecting us to community boards. And I want to thank the community board chairs, district managers, and members of the public who are tuning in today. So as we all heard, and as you know, ranked choice voting provides New York City with a real opportunity to energize and expand participation in our electoral system. And we will have more choices for voters, and RCV incentivizes candidates to campaign broadly, as we've heard, and disincentivizes negative campaigning and can really encourage coalition building, both, I think, on the candidate side and the community side. And this is going to be very important for us because we are in a time of increased polarization, and ranked choice voting is going to be really helpful to move us, past that and if we really, if we can really work together to make it a reality. And Queens is the most diverse county in the country, and we're hosting this, really happy again and proud to be hosting on this training with you all here today. And this training is really to help us prepare for the special election for Council District 24 on February 2nd. And early voting, as we all know, is going to be open from this Saturday, the 23rd, through January 31st. And we welcome and hope that you'll really help spread the word about this upcoming special election and spread the message about what you hear today. So without further ado, I'm going to actually turn over to Amanda Melillo from the Campaign Finance Board. Candidates for political office know the CFB, the Campaign Finance Board, is the agency that's charged with administering the campaign finance system. CFB is also responsible for voter education, and they have recently launched a very robust Train the Trainer program to help educate New Yorkers about ranked choice voting and to empower us to share this information with our neighbors. So we really want to encourage people to sign up for those trainings. So I'd like to welcome from the CFB, the Deputy Director for Public Affairs, Amanda Melillo, who's going to educate and answer questions on ranked choice voting today. So please hold your questions until the end of the presentation, or you're also welcome to type them into the chat for us to refer to afterwards. Amanda, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saeed, for that introduction. And I really want to thank the Borough President's Office for having us here today. We are so happy to be giving these trainings to Queens. You guys are going to be the pioneers in ranked choice voting, the very first in the city to try this out. Just a little bit about the presentation I'm going to be giving. I'm giving the version of our presentation that is for voters. So it's our voter-facing presentation. We are also giving, as mentioned, a Train the Trainer presentation series. So if you would like to know more about how to educate your communities, how to talk to voters about ranked choice voting, and do even more of a deep dive than I'm going to get into today, I do encourage you to sign up for one of those trainings. I'll drop a link into the chat once I'm done presenting during the Q&A. Just bear with me for a moment as I share my screen and get my PowerPoint presentation going. It's always a little bit tricky to transition into the PowerPoint mode. But yeah, let's dive right into it. Ranked choice voting in New York City. Just a bit of an outline so you know what to expect in today's presentation. I'll give a bit of an introduction, a little bit more about the CFB and also myself and my role at the CFB. I will talk about our role in ranked choice voting, and then I will dive into what is ranked choice voting, how does it work, what are the frequently asked questions that we tend to hear from voters. Next, I'll go into reasons to rank. As mentioned, voters don't have to rank candidates, but I'll talk a little bit about why they might want to rank up to 5. And then we will have time for a question and answer period at the end where we can dive into all the questions that folks have. So just a little bit more about the Campaign Finance Board. As mentioned, I'm sure many of you on this training are familiar with the CFB. But for those of you who aren't, we are a nonpartisan and independent city agency, and we empower New Yorkers to make a greater impact on their elections by administering the city's public matching funds program. So we provide public matching funds on an 8-to-1 basis for candidates running for city office. In addition to that, we engage voters through our NYC Votes Initiative. On the NYC Votes side of things, because we do have a charter mandate to increase participation among underrepresented communities in particular, we first off inform all New Yorkers with what they need to know in order to participate in our democracy. We do that through things like the voter guide, through advertising campaigns, getting in your mailbox and your social media feed, and just making sure we're putting a lot of information out there that partners can pick up and use. Second, we engage underrepresented communities as per our charter mandate through our outreach initiatives, which I'm happy to talk to anyone about who is interested afterwards. Just so you can all learn a little bit about me, as mentioned, I'm the Deputy Director of Public Affairs at the Campaign Finance Board. I've worked at the CFB since 2014. Prior to that, I worked on voting rights at the Brennan Center for Justice. As part of my role, I manage the voter education efforts of NYC Votes. And just so you all know, I didn't know that much about ranked choice voting until the 2019 Charter Revision Commission got to work. But over time, I've learned a lot about it. I think it's a really intuitive system, and happy to dive more into it. Here's what we're hoping you're going to understand at the end of this training. As I mentioned, we'll give an overview of how ranked choice voting is going to work in New York City. We'll talk a bit about how ranked choice voting can benefit voters and why they might want to choose to rank candidates, as mentioned, up to 5. And finally, we'll talk about where to find resources and FAQs, and I'm happy to share out more information after the presentation. All right, so diving right in, what is ranked choice voting? So ranked choice voting is a new way for voters to elect their representatives. As mentioned, voters will now be able to rank up to 5 candidates in order of preference instead of just choosing one. And, as people have mentioned already, this has a number of benefits for voters. It gives voters more of a say in who ultimately wins in elections. It increases civility in candidates when they're campaigning, and it also can lead to more diverse candidates winning elected office, as we've seen in other cities. So I'm sad to tell you, are not the first city to use ranked choice voting. A lot of times New Yorkers like to be the first. There are actually 17 other cities in the United States that use ranked choice voting. However, we are going to be the biggest and most diverse city in the country using this. And a lot of people have said, if New York City can do it, anyone can do it. In Maine, they use ranked choice voting on a statewide basis, and Alaska just voted to also implement ranked choice voting for statewide elections. We also like to drop this in as a fun fact. The Academy Awards also uses ranked choice voting to determine their Best Picture winner. I don't know how y'all feel about the Best Picture winners of the past few years, but this is just a good way to know that this is a vote method that's used in other places where people have a lot of options that they need to sort through. All right, as mentioned, how did ranked choice voting get to New York City? This is one of the questions we get the most from voters. So for those of you who do or don't remember, back in 2019, the Charter Revision Commission voted to create ballot question 1. So this put a question in front of the voters about whether or not to establish ranked choice voting in primary and special elections for local office. Pretty overwhelmingly, New Yorkers voted yes. 74% of people who cast a vote on this question said, yeah, they wanted ranked choice voting. And now we are rolling it out for the first time. So this went into effect on January 1st, 2021. The very first election that this is going to be used, I think, by the way, that when ranked choice voting was first put into the charter, everyone is anticipating those first special elections were going to happen in March. We're actually testing this out a little bit earlier. Our very first special election with ranked choice voting is that Council District 24 special election on February 2nd. Early voting starts on January 23rd, so that's coming right up when voters are going to be doing this for the first time. In our second special election where we'll be using this, that's in District 31. Election day for that is on February 23rd. Some important things to know aside from those special elections. Ranked choice voting is now going to be used in all special elections and primary elections for city offices moving forward. Those city offices are mayor, public advocate, comptroller, borough president, and city council. So that's important to remember because we aren't going to be using ranked choice voting in any general elections. We're also not going to be using ranked choice voting for federal or state races like president or Congress or governor. Those are the races I think a lot of us are familiar voting for all the time. We're also not going to be using this in local races like district attorney and judgeships. So luckily in Queens, your district attorney race is on a different schedule than some of those municipal offices. But something that's really useful to know just in case is ranked choice voting races will be on one side of the ballot and then single choice election races will be on the other side of the ballot. So you just got to make sure you vote both sides, which is a good practice in every single election. So just as a recap of how we've always voted for these offices, like mayor, like comptroller, like city council. So we've always cast ballots in what we call, what political scientists call plurality elections. At the Campaign Finance Board, we don't love that term. We think it's a little bit wonky. We started calling those single choice elections. So that's where voters can choose one candidate for each office, and the candidate with the highest number of votes wins. But what we see in New York City, we know that a lot of people can run for each office. I think our average in city council races is anywhere between 6 to 12 candidates, depending on the district. So what this means, when you have so many people running, which is a good thing to see, we like to see more voices in the process, but it also means that a lot of candidates can win without receiving a majority of the vote. I think in New York City, something like 2/3 of all races are determined where the winner of the race doesn't crack that 50% number. So this leads to things like people representing districts without the majority support of that district. Ranked choice voting, aims to change this equation a little bit. An important thing to also remember is in citywide office, before, if no candidate achieved a 40% total of the vote for mayor, public advocate, or comptroller, then a runoff election had to take place with those top two candidates. I don't know if you all remember back in 2013 when Mayor de Blasio won the Democratic primary, but there were several weeks where there was an open question of like, did he get 40% of the vote? Do we need to have a runoff election? There was a lot of uncertainty around that. Ranked choice voting eliminates this need for runoff elections because we will know once the votes are tallied, really who the winner is at the end of the day. As I mentioned before, in single choice elections, this is true of runoffs and non-runoff elections, candidates can often win without 50% of the vote. So we see all the time candidates winning with, say, 30% of the vote, or 33% of the vote. So that can often mean something like 2/3 of the electorate didn't have a part in picking who the winner was going to be. They voted for someone else. In terms of runoff elections, we know that those are very low turnout. They're really expensive. They don't allow full participation. Military and overseas voters often couldn't get their ballots in time, so they couldn't cast ballots in runoff elections at all. We know, because we do a lot of voter engagement, it is really hard to make people come back a second time. It can be hard enough to get people to come the first time in many cases, and then asking them to come back to cast a second vote in an election can definitely be challenging. And we know that runoff elections are also super costly to run. They cost around $20 million just to get poll sites set up. We have to administer a matching funds program in runoff elections, or we used to, and that the need for that is now eliminated. So now I'm just going to dive into, how does ranked choice voting work? What is this going to look like for voters? So as mentioned, voters are now going to be able to rank up to 5 candidates for office. In some races, there may be fewer than 5 candidates, but in almost every race in New York City, we've been watching all the candidates registering to run for office. In almost every race, we're definitely going to have 5 or more candidates. So voters, when they're going to fill out their ballot, now instead of just selecting one candidate and filling in this oval, they can now pick their first choice and mark the oval next to their name in that first choice column. If you have a second choice as a voter, you then go mark the oval next to their name in that second choice column, and you do that up to 5. Voters can still choose to vote for only one candidate if they prefer. I'll talk a little bit more about that in future slides. They can rank all the way up to 5. Let's say you really only like 3 candidates for office and you only want to rank 3, you can certainly do that. So this really gives voters sort of more flexibility and choice about how to use their vote. But I will say we've seen the ballots and they are fairly intuitive. I know in previous elections we can tend to have problems with ballots being confusing, with font being really small, with people not sure how to fill it out. So this is a sample ballot for that Council District 24 special election I mentioned. That's early voting is kicking off this Saturday. This is cut off just so we could actually fit it on the PowerPoint slide, but here you can see each candidate's name is displayed. In special elections, every candidate creates a party line to run on in the special election, so you can see that as well. And depending on the jurisdiction, you might see different language translations on the ballot. In Queens, this is where you tend to get the most translations, such as Korean and Bengali, which I do see on this ballot. And then it's pretty clear that you can mark your first choice up through fifth. I think we are really pleased with how the ballot layout came out, because that was really an open question, but this is just an opportunity to see what that sample ballot looks like. So, in every election, there are a number of errors that voters can make when they're going to mark their ballot. So we just wanted to preview some of the things that voters might do that could cause problems for them down the line. I just want to note it doesn't mean their vote will be thrown out. It just means if they did try to rank other candidates, it might not be counted. So in this first example, this is how you would overvote on a ranked choice voting ballot. Overvoting is when you vote for two or more candidates on a single party line in a single choice election. In a ranked choice voting election, it's when you vote for two or more candidates with the same rank. So in this example, if the Board of Elections went to go count how this ballot was supposed to work, they really can't tell a voter's intent here. Did this voter prefer candidate B or did this voter prefer candidate C? And this is the sort of thing that could lead to a ballot not counting. What I will say is, from what we have heard, the voting machines have now been programmed to give error messages so that if a voter fills out a ballot incorrectly, they should get that instant feedback when they're at the poll site and have an opportunity to correct it. So for us, the concern is really more around absentee ballots, because voters don't get that instant feedback if they're filling out their ballots at home or somewhere else. Second of all, we advise you don't rank a candidate more than once. I mean, you can, it will not get your ballot thrown out, but it doesn't functionally mean anything if you rank a candidate in every single slot. It doesn't help or hurt your favorite candidate. I'm sure some people want to do it as a show of support. Like, I like this candidate so much, I'd vote them for every ranking, but only your first choice will actually be counted. So that's what it looks like for voters on the front end. Let's talk a little bit about how it looks on the back end when we're trying to figure out, okay, who actually won this election? So in ranked choice voting, in any system, first you're going to run through, okay, who got the most votes? In a ranked choice voting system, the question is, who got the most first choice votes? So all of those are counted first. And in this example we're showing here, there's actually a clear winner. Someone did get majority support. Candidate B won 54%. If a candidate receives more than 50% of the first choice votes, they win the election. We don't start going to all the rankings if someone's got a majority of votes. But as I said, in a lot of elections, we don't get a clear majority winner in that first time around. So here's what happens if we don't get a clear majority winner. So in this example, candidate B did not in fact crack that 50% threshold. Candidate B only got 39% of the vote and is still coming out ahead. But, we're going to need to go to a ranking system. Again, once no one gets 50% of the vote on that first round, that's when we start looking at second, third, and fourth choice rankings. So in each round, the candidate with the fewest amount of votes loses the race, essentially. They have the fewest amounts, so their votes get reallocated to the candidates who got second choice votes. So let's say I'm a voter, candidate D was my absolute favorite, but candidate D lost the election, didn't get as many first choice votes as everyone else. So then my vote would be picked up and moved to my second choice candidate. And here's how it looks in practice when those votes start to get reallocated, because this can be kind of a tricky concept. So, some people who ranked candidate A as their second choice, their votes are going to get moved to candidate A. For people who ranked candidate B as their second choice, their votes will get moved to candidate B, and so on. And then this continues in rounds. So then you look at, okay, how are the votes sort of shaking out now? Now you have candidate C, who's losing, coming in last place. So candidate C is the next to get taken out of the race, and candidate C's third choice or votes then go to other candidates, or second and third choice votes, depending on how people ranked. So this happens until you get to a the top two candidates in any given race. And this is just a little bit how that math looks. Once those candidate C votes get reallocated, they get reallocated to candidate A and B, and then we have a clear winner of candidate B, who again was like kind of coming out ahead in the first round, but once the votes get reallocated, clear majority support. So in New York City, this does look a little bit different than it does in some jurisdictions, where ranked choice voting only gets triggered if no one reaches 50% in that first round. And then once ranked choice voting is triggered, we go all the way to the end until we have those top two remaining candidates, which not every city does. But we want to make sure that our winner is like a clear winner with the most votes. So I just want to do some expectation setting about results, because I think until the pandemic happened, all of us were used to having election night results and like that instant gratification of knowing, okay, I went to the poll site today and I'm going to know who won tonight. Then the pandemic happened. A lot more people started voting absentee. We had to wait a while to count ballots at every level here in New York City and at the national level. So we've gotten used to waiting, which I think is probably a good thing, because we are going to have to wait a little bit for ranked choice voting results as well. So in some cases, the winner is not going to be known on election night, because we do have to wait for those absentee ballots to come in and get factored into the vote tallies, which, you know, this looks a little bit different in ranked choice voting than it does if you're counting in a single choice election. From what we know of races that happen around the country, in half of ranked choice voting elections, there is a winner in the first round. So it's very likely in New York City that in some races, we would know the winner on election night. But for people in races where there isn't a clear winner on election night, the winner won't be known for a week or longer until all votes are counted. Of course, I say a week or longer now, because that's how long it takes for absentee ballots to get counted now. From what we understand, the state is looking to make some changes to speed up that absentee counting process. But what I can tell you today is it will take at least a week. Just to dive into some frequently asked questions by voters. And again, these are the top asked questions. So if you have questions after this, I'm happy to try to answer as much as I can. But one of the questions we often get is just like, do I have to rank candidates, or can I still vote for just one candidate if I only like one? As I said, this system of voting gives voters really a lot of flexibility and choice about how they can use their ballot. So if you only like one candidate in any given race for any office, you only have to choose one. That's totally fine. You know, if you choose to rank candidates, you can rank up to 5. But as I mentioned before, let's say you only like 3 candidates, you can only rank 3. You can choose to use your vote as you want to use your vote. So another question, because some folks, and we have this conversation in our office, because we have some folks who are very math brained and some folks who are not. Someone asked, you know, we get this question, if I rank 5 candidates, does that mean I get 5 votes that get counted? The answer to that is no. Your vote only counts once. It's just that if your candidate loses and gets eliminated, your vote is then moved to your next top choice. But if you choose to rank to 5 candidates, you aren't getting 5 bites at the apple. You aren't getting to like pick 5 favorites. You only get 1 favorite at a time. That's the way we think about it. And it's just a matter if they're still in the game. Is there a benefit of ranking multiple choices? For voters who are like, learning a new system can be a little tricky, should I rank 5? We think there is a benefit for ranking multiple candidates. I don't know about you. full confession, I am not from Queens. I live in Brooklyn, so I'm going to use like Brooklyn examples and hopefully not step on anyone's toes. I have definitely, as a voter, had races where I liked more than one candidate in a race, or maybe I was worried about like, should I vote for this candidate if this candidate's my favorite? In a ranked choice voting election, you don't really have to like ask those questions of yourself as a voter. You know, let's say I was like, I really love this one candidate. I don't think this candidate has any shot of winning, but I would love to express my preference. I think this is especially true for anyone who voted in a presidential primary ever, where you have so many candidates trying to vie for that top office. And sometimes it's a little hard to tell them apart. You'd be really happy with some. In ranked choice voting, if your favorite candidate gets eliminated from the race, then your vote moves on, and you still get to have a say through all these rounds of counting, even if like your favorite candidates keep getting eliminated because they're not other people's favorite candidates as well. So this is just making sure your vote stays in the game for longer. Again, voters don't have to do it, but there's no harm in doing it. So those are the top asked questions that we get. I know from doing these presentations and from sitting through these presentations, there's always a lot more questions that we get, and I'm happy to answer those now. But just to go into this a little bit about what other resources are available, because this is just like, you know, your basic level ranked choice voting training. If you want to know more, we do have information up on our website at nyccfb.info/RCV. You can also link out to, on the RCV page, you can link out to this website page with FAQs that we are continuously updating all the time. We are fielding questions on social media and via email every day. And we sort of like gather and say, okay, what are the questions we're getting a lot of? What do we need to add to that FAQ? So that's getting updated all the time. We've also created a ranked choice voting explainer that we have been translating into multiple languages. At the Campaign Finance Board, we translate into the Voting Rights Act languages of Spanish, Chinese, Korean, and Bengali. We know that, especially in a borough as diverse as Queens, there are a lot of other languages spoken as well. So we're always looking for language partners to help us get more materials translated, and we've been working with City Hall to try to get some additional translation resources as well. I am also happy to send out after this, if anyone is interested in signing up for a Train the Trainer presentation, if you want to take this out to your community and tell other people how ranked choice voting works, that's what I would recommend. Sign up for a Train the Trainer. And there you would get resources such as the partner toolkit to just get a little more background information about ranked choice voting. And finally, I think this is the kicker, just to go into reasons to rank. You know, we really want to focus on how does this benefit voters? You know, it's a new law. We want to make sure that voters are comfortable adopting it. So we've done a lot of talking to voters. We've tested materials with voters to get some input from them. You know, one of the things I think is really cool about New York City, one of the things that voters like is that this is new. When we described it as a new method of voting, people are like, okay, yeah, it's new. I like that, because in New York City, we're not afraid of what's new, right? But other things that people really liked was this idea that voters get more of a say in who gets elected, that their vote kind of goes farther. If their favorite candidate gets knocked out of the race, you know, that their vote keeps getting counted in later rounds. Another thing that people like is this idea that candidates are more likely to appeal to a wide audience, because now candidates have incentive to try to be not just people's first choices on the ballot, but their second choice or their third choice. And maybe they have to talk to groups of voters they might not have talked to before. We were really shocked to hear from voters that they like getting campaign contact. They like getting campaign mail. Unlike voters in swing states who are complaining about getting advertised to all the time, in New York City, they actually like that campaign contact. And they like this